It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wise discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. So this morning, it's been a nice looking start to the day, just like yesterday morning. But the difference, we've entered a new month. And that's what we're going to take a look at in this video. What does the first week of August have to bring weather-wise to South Mississippi? One thing I can tell you is that we're actually, believe it or not, tracking a cool front. And we'll take you to the map right now to show you what that looks like. So there's a look at the cool front that's sitting over the Magnolia State. If you have friends or family rather that are staying or visiting northern Mississippi, they might be telling you that the conditions up there are a little bit different compared to what we're experiencing here. First of all, let's take a look at, I'm curious to see what the dew point numbers are reading. I suspect we're going to find them a little bit lower in the northern portion of the state, and yep, that's exactly what it is. These areas up here, it's not a huge difference, but it is a difference. You can see that these dew point numbers up here in the northern edge of the state have fallen into the lower 70s. So technically the air feels a little bit drier in places like Tunica and Tupelo compared to down here on the soupy coast where the air is like butter. You know, it's moist. we got dew points in the upper 70s. So it is definitely a very moist morning along the Gulf Coast compared to our neighbors to the north. And one other thing this is going to do is actually drop the temperatures for northern Mississippi. So this is today's high temperature forecast. And look at this. Areas like Tunica and Tupelo, they might not even hit 80 degrees at all today. You can see several areas in the northern part of the state that don't get all that hot because they are behind this cool front that is eventually going to stall and slow down as it moves. It's trying to move toward the south. So that's what fronts typically, they move from the north to the south in this part of the country. If you get behind them, you can get this drier, cooler air. But if you stay ahead of them, well, it stays warm and sticky. And that's what we're going to have today. We're not going to have that front slide through the area. You usually don't see that until you get to basically later out of summer and into fall. That's when those fronts are able to push all the way down to the coast. But in the summer season, they typically never really make it down as far south as us on the coast. The temperatures this morning, pretty comfortable, 77 in Tunica. And meanwhile, we're the warm spot on the state. You can see the state map showing 85-degree reading near parts of Gulfport. And we can take a look outside the window. You know, it's, like I said, it was a nice looking morning. It doesn't feel as nice as it felt yesterday morning, but it looks so nice. I couldn't resist. Look, I work next to the beach, and one of the perks is I can just kind of go on a brief little break right down the road and take a look at the beach. And I took some pictures, and I do like I always tell y'all, I submitted them to the First Alert weather app. So we can take a look actually at some of those picture submissions right here. I pulled this up on our WLOX.com website. You know how to do that, right? You just go to WLOX.com, click the weather button. That takes you to the weather page, and then you scroll down, and on the right side, you'll see the weather photo gallery, which contains all of the recently approved submitted weather pictures. And here's mine. I actually already opened them up in some tabs up on the top, so we'll just take a look at that full screen, showing that beautiful beach view right there in parts of Gulfport, Biloxi. That was a picture I took this morning. You can also see this one not too far from one of the piers in Gulfport. I believe this is near Courthouse. And let's take another look down here. This is not too far from Cowan Lorraine by Highway 90, of course. And you can see that little gazebo there. Look how pretty the beach looks this morning. A nice blue sky. And then one last picture. This was not too far from, I think, DeBees Road, maybe. You can see just, again, a very pretty beach view to start off our Friday. So hopefully you enjoyed those views. I couldn't resist taking a picture. It was so pretty. And, you know, right now still looks pretty on this live camera over Gulfport, facing off toward the west, toward Long Beach. temperatures, these conditions, the winds are pretty light, if not variable, and they're only at about 5 to almost 10 miles an hour. We have a lot of sun and temperatures that have already hit into the middle 80s across most of the area. But one of my favorite parts about August 1st is that I finally get to say fall officially starts next month. Now, I'm not talking about temperatures. I'm not talking about weather. I'm just talking about the calendar. The calendar will say that fall begins next month. That technical moment will be September 22nd at 1:19 p.m. That is the autumnal equinox that will usher in the fall season. And again, we know in South Mississippi, the weather does not change on a dime usually once we switch from summer to fall. It typically takes quite a while for us to get out of the heat. But there are some encouraging signs. One of them you might be wondering about is, when do we see our final 90-degree day of the year? And if we take a look at the last few years, it does tend to be around early October. So we still got a ways to go, but that's actually an interesting thing. Some of you might not understand or realize is that there is a final 90-degree day. Say it a different way. Throughout the records of history that date back to the 1890s, we have never recorded a temperature of 90 or hotter in the month of November or December. It's never happened. Maybe it could begin happening at some point, who knows? But as far as the current weather records state, we've never seen 90 degrees actually recorded in November or December at where we keep the climate records at the Gulfport Airport. Now, like I said, the final 90-degree day, usually around October. You know, back in 2021, it was actually much earlier, on September 5th. You may remember that year we had Hurricane Ida make landfall in Louisiana, and we saw some impacts over on Mississippi coast as well. So that kind of brought an earlier than usual end to the heat from the summer. I don't want a repeat of that. If we have to put up with 90 degrees, if that's what gets us to not have a hurricane hitting close, I'll take the 90 before I take, you know, whatever Ida was. I think that was a major hurricane of that year. Anyway, let's take a look at what the month of August typically has to bring. This is a look at the monthly climate stats for the month of August in the Gulfport, Biloxi area. We tend to see the first day of the month with a high of about 91, the last day of the month with a high of about 90. Ooh, that's the first time that's happened this summer. We are finally beginning to see that decrease. It will eventually get those normal highs or average highs out of the 90s once we get to September. But that means the first day of the month typically is not going to be as cool as the last day of the month. I think we could see some cool downs by the very end of August. It's a possibility. A very slight cool down, not a huge one, but a slight. Morning temperatures also take a degree drop as well, so go from 75 to 74. It's the beginning of taking the steps in the direction of decreasing temperatures. On average, we tend to see about 6.5 inches of rain, and that is actually not that much compared to July. I want to pull up the July normal rain and compare it to August normal rain, and you actually see a slight decrease there. Now, we're still in some of the wettest months of the year. June, July, August typically are our wettest months of the year in Gulfport, Biloxi. But we do get that decrease from July into August, a slight one. That will continue into September. And then we actually hit the absolute driest month of the entire year coming in October. So you can expect, usually in October, we tend to see, you know, sometimes some drought conditions developing. So it's important for us to get the rain in when we're normally supposed to. These 3 months here, we're normally supposed to see a good amount of rain. Hopefully we can get some rain in each time. That way we don't have to worry about the drought situation in October. Rain chances today, they're there. I think we're going to see more rain today than we saw yesterday. We didn't really get that much yesterday. We were calling for 30 to 40% yesterday, and we wound up with hardly anything. Today we're calling for about 40%, but maybe this time we'll wind up with something more than yesterday. There's a little bit of, like I told you, that cool front that's trying to move in. That will help to kind of boost the rain coverage in the area. A front is kind of like a convergence zone for winds. And when those winds are moving in, let me show you. I'll illustrate this on the map. I think I showed this yesterday on Futurecast, actually. Let's pull up this rain map here. Now, it's not going to be exact, but if we zoom out, so that front, behind that front, you typically have winds coming in from the north like this. Ahead of the front, sometimes you can have winds coming in directly at it, especially when it's a strong front. This one's not strong. So what do we see the winds doing? They're not actually, coming directly down. They're, at least on the Mississippi portion of the map, they're kind of coming around like this. Now, if we move over just a smidge, we actually have more of a direct convergence where the winds are directly running into each other perpendicular. They're coming down here across South Carolina and up here toward North Carolina. So you have more of this convergence, and what do you know? Look at the rain. There's more of a blue and purple color there, indicating more rainfall. And this is what I was going to explain. When you have the convergence of winds along a frontal boundary, those winds clash and they run into each other, and now that means they're going to be bumped away from each other and they have to change direction. Typically, when winds clash at the surface, well, they can't go underground, so typically that leads to rising air currents, and that's what lets frontal zones be these areas of lift that allow for rising air currents and rain showers and thunderstorms to vertically grow and develop along the frontal boundary. So that's why you see along that front, there's plenty of places with rain. Most of them are probably going to be South Carolina, North Carolina, but we can't rule out a few showers over portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia as well. The bottom line here, though, is as we go into the weekend, there's not going to be any extreme heat, just your typical August heat. Hit or miss thunderstorms are a possibility, but I also expect us to get many rain-free hours on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. So that's important for your weekend plans. You probably don't need to make any cancellations. Just keep an eye on the radar and understand that there might be some pop-up showers and storms at times, and not everyone will see these. You take a look at the Futurecast for today, and you're going to see the potential in the morning hours for not much rain, only the chance only about 20 to 30%. But then the chances actually increase heading into Friday p.m. and we'll see a few places with some showers and storms. I don't think everyone's going to see rain today. The modeling so far has been really insistent on places that are mainly to the west of Highway 49 seeing the rain today. So places like Poplarville, Picayune, Diamond Head, Waveland, Bay St. Louis, The Kill. Those are all places that might see maybe a little bit more rain today than places like Van Cleve, Gaucher, Moss Point, Pascagoula. It doesn't mean that y'all won't see any at all in Jackson County, but maybe the places west of you see a bit more than you do. Now, if you have some Friday evening plans, maybe you got a dinner date scheduled later tonight, or you have an evening jog or run, the good news is that we're expecting a decrease in the rain activity as we go from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. We're probably also going to see another decrease in the rain activity as we go from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. So that means the rain activity decreasing heading into Friday evening and Friday night could work out pretty well for any of your plans to be out and about during the Friday evening time frame. But we've come a long way. This week was one that began with extreme heat. Do y'all remember when we were together on this past Monday and Tuesday? We had the hottest day of the year on Monday, and then we did it again with the next hottest day of the year on Tuesday. So yeah, we were almost at 100. This ended after Tuesday. Even though we had a couple of days with that extreme heat, we put that to rest. Y'all remember we had some big storms that developed Tuesday p.m. and we saw even more rain on Wednesday, and so the pattern shifted for us, and we've now kind of gotten rid of that extreme heat. And if we take a look at the next 7 days, this gets you right through the first 7 days of August. This is an encouraging sign. We don't see any return to those highs in that extreme level, the upper 90s. Don't see any of that. We're only seeing highs in the lower and middle 90s, maybe even some days in the upper 80s. So that's certainly an encouraging sign when you can go into the first week of August and not have to worry about extreme heat. We actually, one thing I want to show before I go, this is really interesting to me. We started the week with that extreme heat warning. on Monday and Tuesday. Then we had a heat advisory on Wednesday and Thursday. And here we are Friday, and the alerts map is completely blank. The 6 southernmost counties have no weather alerts for heat on Friday. So this is the first time that this has happened all week long. That doesn't mean it's going to be like comfortably cool. We are still expecting the heat index to climb into the triple digits today, perhaps within the next hour or so. And that could continue into parts of Friday afternoon with a heat index into the triple digits. But since it's not above 108 for the most part, that's why we don't have that hot weather alert in place. You see, Monday, Tuesday, we were up here. And then Wednesday, Thursday, we were right here. But here we are on Friday, and we're right down below the danger level, just below it, but we are below the danger level. So the heat that is there is not as dangerous as it was earlier this week. And look, I'll take it. That's a small victory. I'm definitely happy to see. And I think that trend will likely continue into the next 7 days, as we're not expecting any more temperature spikes, at least for now. Could it happen later into the month of August? Sure. But at least for the first 7 days of August, it does look like we're going to stay away from the type of extreme heat that we have been seeing in waves over the last several weeks. Well, that'll do it for this Friday edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. I hope that you have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next time. Take care.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.